The Home Trip by ShiningEve, Chapter 3. I guess I should explain this. Peter sighed and pinched his nose. Shuri was still hanging on his back like a monkey. She had already ruined her perfect princess reputation, so T'Challa didn't even try to care anymore. Peter turned to her and whispered in her ear, "Do anything funny and I'll drop you and paint your personal ship with pink and brown polka dots." He wasn't below doing something like that, not at all. He sighed and faced his class. "So, these are my parents?" he muttered, waving a hand at Natasha and Bucky. What the hell? He had killed people under Hydra without blinking, and he was stuttering in front of a group of goddamn teenagers? "No!" quickly came Flash's rebuttal, who seemed to be asking for death, but in his own self-righteousness, he didn't notice how he had become number one on every present Avengers kill list. Bucky was fingering the safety on a shotgun, Natasha was reaching for a knife, Carol's hands were sparking, and she would most likely later deny it. Okoye gripped on her spear tightened. Peter's windpipe was starting to get crushed by Shuri, who was taking her anger out on his air supply and throat. She realized she was choking him and released her arms a bit. The rest of the class was starting to back away from Flash. Even his goonies, who had always stood behind him and laughed, were realizing now wasn't a good time, because instead of bullying weak penis Parker in an abandoned hallway, it was in a room full of dangerously armed Avengers who looked like they all wanted a piece of Flash's head. Flash continued on, unaware of the growing anger in the Avengers. He began gesturing wildly, pacing back and forth on the mats. I could entertain the idea that he was an intern, but that's impossible. I'm not an intern. I'm Flash Thompson, the smartest and coolest guy at Midtown High. But Penis saying he's the child of Avengers? Ha! Right, hilarious. I'm cracking up right now. What's so special about puny penis part of... Before he could finish his sentence, a bullet from Bucky's gun came dangerously close to his nose. Flash finally stopped and turned slowly to face the Avengers, eyes wide and face pale. You could have played and that was when he knew he fucked up track over that moment, and it would have worked perfectly. Bucky turned to Tony, who he had apparently beat into shooting Flash in the face. They don't get to sue me, do they? Tony shrugged. Natasha was visibly furious. She was terrifying. Flash looked like he wanted to throw himself out the window and go splat on the sidewalk. Natasha would still burn his remains. She began to viciously swear and growl in a mix of Russian, Polish, and Romanian. Peter didn't care to translate for the class. Natasha halted in her swearing before rounding on Flash and waving her knife in his face. You talk to my son again? You so much as even look at him. I will find you and I will kill you. Slowly, painfully. You read me? Peter could have sworn Flash pissed his pants. He probably did. He couldn't tell because his mom was blocking his view. Flash squeaked before a set of burly security guards came in to pull him out. Peter saw Tony nod appreciatively out of the corner of his eye. After a few moments of silence, Carol clapped her hands, dissipating the blue energy around them. Who wants to see some Avengers firearms? The spell over the class was broken, and they all moved forward to the firing range. Peter noticed his favorite guns on one of the lane tables. Steve stepped forward to explain what was going to happen. Each Avenger will show you their respective weapons and how they work. We'll go down the line so no one has to redo their presentation too many times. Natasha was up first, showing off her widow's bites and pistols. Bucky showed off his large semi-automatic rifles and his old machine gun. Carol blew up some things with her hands, and Clint shot off a couple of his safer arrows. When they came to Peter's lane, he stepped forwards. A couple of Flash's goons looked really terrified in that moment. He picked up his pistol and shot off a few rounds. Clint grinned cockily. "Boring," Clint groaned. "I could do that with my eyes shut." Peter smirked before turning sideways and hitting the bullseye again. Clint still gave him a smirk. Peter turned backwards and shot another round perfectly into the bullseye. Clint came forwards and picked up the other pistol. Closing his eyes, he switched the gun between his hands, hitting the center of the target. Peter was getting ticked. Shoving Clint out of the way, he stole back his second gun and flipped in midair. As he was upside down facing the targets, he pulled the triggers. Landing, he surveyed the damage done. The target lay in two pieces. Shuri cackled and put out her hand. Tony sighed and slapped $100 in her hand. Seriously, 2 billionaires betting 100 should have been closer to 1,000. The class looked like a group of wide-eyed cardboard cutouts. No one was moving. Tony broke the silence. "Well, that's all for today. Thanks for joining us." The class was ushered out. About 20 minutes later, the class had left, but Peter had stayed home. He felt his phone vibrate. It was a text from MJ. "FYI, Flash did piss his pants." Peter smirked. On Monday, Peter got up, got dressed, ate, and made his way to school. He had tried to find his car keys, but they weren't there. After asking Friday, she gave him a pair of keys to Tony's 2020 Aston Martin Vintage. Peter tried to find the keys to any other less flashy car, but didn't have the time. Sighing in defeat, he took it to school. Pulling into the parking lot, everyone turned and stared. People were probably expecting Flash. Peter grabbed his backpack and opened the door to face the mob. Locking the car, he pushed through the crowd staring at him. "That's Parker's car? The heck, is he loaded? Dang, look at that car. People said he was friends with Tony Stark. No way." Peter reached the steps where he saw Ned and MJ. Before he could reach them, a group of boys cut in front of him. "Hey Peter, nice ride you got there. Want to come with us later to a movie?" One of them piped up. Peter knew exactly what they were going for. He grinned internally. "Hey Ned, MJ." The boys looked peeved. All they had wanted was a ride in Tony's car. Both Ned and MJ came forwards. They nodded in greeting. Trying to hide their snorts of laughter, they turned and went inside. When they passed through the hall, they came to Flash and his goonies. The hall went silent. Flash didn't realize why until he saw Peter. He turned white as a sheet and tripped over his own feet. In his haste to run away, the students stared at Peter. He didn't care. Making his way into class, he ignored the pointed looks. At the end of the day, Ned and MJ got into the Aston Martin with Peter, but before Peter could close his door, Flash stepped in the way. "Hey, I just wanted to say, I'm sorry." Peter was tempted to forgive him, but knew that Flash wasn't actually sorry. Flash, like the boys who had confronted him, only wanted a piece of Peter's money and stuff. Peter stared Flash down, trying to look sympathetic. A crowd was gathering around them. Some were recording the situation. Flash, Peter simmered, trying to sound as pitying as possible. "Yeah?" Flash responded, buying it. Peter could see Flash's thoughts. They said, Penis is gonna forgive me. I can get a piece of his shit now. I'm gonna be even cooler now. Peter's gaze hardened, going from Fox forgiving to a death glare his mom would be proud of. Move, you're in the way. Flash practically ran away. The entire crowd oohed and screamed burn at Flash, pulling on a pair of Tony's sunglasses he had left in the car. Peter closed the door and revved the engine, pulling out of the school parking lot. End of chapter.